is what can we know about human rationality from logic, from philosophical logic in particular. So I will speak about some things that have happened historically that is, well, a very traditional view about logic that pretty much considers logic and rationality to be hand in hand. And then somehow things got complicated. Then what we think about human rationality from cognitive sciences, then the view from philosophical logic, and finally, how can we get both together back again after that divorce? So I'll begin. Then this is a super brief history. I'm not thinking this is a history actually, but I only want us, I only want to make sure that we're on the same page. That back then, logic was considered to be one with reasoning, one and the same thing. We can read about that maybe in authors like Immanuel Kant or George Boole, people for whom logic and deduction had a lot to do with human thinking. And it made a lot of sense. So at some point, well, and of course, you can read about this in the Stanford Encyclopedia article by Shapiro very recently. It brings me some peace to think that I am not making this up. So it is a thing. Maybe we're all familiar with that notion of logic from maybe from high school, maybe from our early days studying philosophy. And now things have changed a lot. We have this view very specifically in Gillian Russell's paper from 2017 that logic has not a normative role regarding rationality and regarding maybe anything in particular, and maybe we should be a little bit more concerned about the idea that logic has nothing to do with human reasoning. That is the view that some cognitive scientists like Stenning Van Lambalgen do not endorse, but do observe. They think this is happening, actually. This is what people believe. So, sorry, I have to clear my throat a little bit. So, well, the idea is, why did this happen? There are a couple of answers. Well, going back to the previous slide. One has to do with how we understand logic. That is Gillian Russell's view. The other has to do with maybe some curricular or academic circumstances, meaning it has to do more with the structures of research labs and universities than with logic and cognitive science themselves. That is what the authors believe. It really wouldn't make a lot of sense to try to decide which is the one and correct. Maybe both are true at some stance. But the final point is, well, these are topics that are separated. And why did it happen now from the view of cognitive science? How can I talk to you relevantly about the way cognitive scientists understand intelligence and rationality? Well, the first thing is to understand what cognitivists believe to be intelligence. And that is what we call the G factor. The G factor, well, there is a very brief story that I put there in the slide. It is misspelled Sperman. Well, this is the history. The idea was this. At the beginning of the 20th century, people was concerned about what rationality was and how could they measure it. And they found that many things. Well, the most relevant idea back then in in the early 20th century was that cognitive ability could be measured, and we could have a specific number that could state what was the cognitive ability of individuals. That would be our intelligence quotient, the IQ. That was Spearman's goal and was his original idea. And he even tried to do some batteries to test intelligence, but with very little success. It was until 1916 that Binet came out with a successful battery to measure intelligence that could, in his own words, could appreciate itself about being scientific and objectively measuring intelligence. And it was quite successful. From that moment on, well, Binet wasn't a theorist of intelligence. He was more focused on measuring intelligence, and somehow the IQ batteries and the G factor theory did, let's say, came hand in hand, made a really good team, and developed what we understand now as the general intelligence theory. That happened throughout the 20th century, with major updates in 1966 by Horn and Cattell, and maybe the most version is in 2002 by Carroll. And the idea is pretty much, well, of course, it is much more sophisticated than before, but the idea is that they can measure some cognitive ability and get an intelligence quotient. And it is what I'm talking right here in this slide. What am I talking about when I say it tests different cognitive abilities? Well, back in 1966, for an instance, Horn and Cattell talked about fluid intelligence and crystallized intelligence that actually dealt with different cognitive tasks. Other feature, for an instance, is working memory that wasn't in the original theory. So it was a great advantage for G-factor to be a flexible theory that could, let's say, be more specialized and more specific about cognitive abilities, and was able to measure and get a quotient about that. Then that was important. Now, another, sorry, there's a helicopter passing. Another important thing was that it has a scale, and that helped a lot because, well, actually, cognitive scientists nowadays keep saying that things that cannot be measured are often not valuable. So that was a breakthrough. It definitely helped a lot to establish it as the dominant theory regarding intelligence theories. And it had quite steady predictive power, meaning people who would get, let's say, good grades, actually a high intelligence quotient, actually could perform well in tasks that were assigned to them. So things nowadays, even nowadays, I think things are quite turning out quite good for this theory, but it wasn't all peaches and cream, because in 1985, people would challenge the theory, saying, yes, G-factor does measure intelligence. Specifically, it measures the, what's the word? The computability of individuals, their ability to do, to do some deductive inferences and so on. But does it measure rationality? And some, let me see if I am, okay, no. And of course, G-factors proponents would say, yes, of course, all the phenomenon of intelligent behavior is encompassed in G-factor. But it was challenged by other theorists, specifically dual process theorists, and they would say it doesn't. It doesn't measure rationality, and they pointed out a phenomenon called disrationality. What is disrationality? It's the inability to think and behave rationally despite having the adequate intelligence. What do we understand by adequate intelligence in this case? Adequate intelligence refers to what G factors is able to measure. That is computable ability. What dual process theorists say is that G factor does well measuring that kind of intelligence, but there are other aspects that are not considered by G factor, and that's where rationality actually is. And there is a volume, well, just to make it more clear, there is a volume called, I wouldn't really understand why is there a helicopter surrounding this place. I hope everything is okay. And I hope mostly that you're hearing me well. Well, there is a volume published in 2002 that it is edited by Robert Steinberger that is called "Why Can Smart People Be So Stupid?" And of course, this might ring a bell to you because you most likely can think of a friend of yours who's really, really smart, really, really capable of accomplishing things in some specific tasks, but in other cases behaves well, not so well. Maybe you're not thinking of a friend, but about yourself. It might happen, and you might wonder why. Why does it happen? And the answer dual process theorists would pose is that, of course, people can have a lot of computable ability, but lack of other stuff. That is where rationality is. And that is what I'm going to talk about. Now, the cognitivist approach, the second part, let's say, the first part is intelligence. The second part is what I'm talking now about, cognitive styles, also known as thinking dispositions. This refers to the way individuals process, calibrate, and or acquire knowledge. I think that's the best definition I could find about cognitive styles by Paige Lucas Stannard. She's now a feminist theory. She does great papers. Back then, when she did more cognitive science, it was great, and now she's great still. And this is very important because cognitive styles have to do with how all of the people have, let's say, some cognitive habits. And of course, that does not necessarily have to do with rationality, because we behave both rationally and irrationally at different moments, at different circumstances. So, according to dual process theorists, this could explain the phenomenon of irrationalia, but also the irrational behavior. Why? Because you would say, of course, you have the intelligence to do the math, let's say in that way, but you lack of some directionality to make proper decisions. And this was addressed as the self-government theory by authors such as, but not exclusively, Sternberg and Grigorenko. And they would describe them this way. There are tendencies that favor rationality, and there are certain tendencies that favor the rational behavior. And for an instance, to take some time to gather information before reaching a conclusion, to seek different points of view, to calibrate, this one is my favorite, to calibrate the strength of beliefs according to the strength of evidence, to think of consequences before taking action, to evaluate the cons and pros before making a decision, and to avoid absolute views. This list comes from a work by Kit Stanovich, published in 2016. And he would say that, well, his goal was and still is to develop, let's say, a battery or a set test to measure rationality in the very same way that we measure intelligence. So that's well, that's the idea of cognitive styles goes back to Piaget, even that way back, but is still relevant, especially for dual process theorists. So, and now it's a suitable time to talk about dual process theories. Well, what they say is that, in short, there are our mind works in two separate tracks. One may take control when we have to do, when we have to perform immediate tasks, and the other one is more reflective. So these tendencies clearly are take place in this other, let's say, this other section or this other part of our mind that is more reflective. And only when this is engaged, we can be rational. But then here's a big objection. Why are these tendencies considered to be rational? And the answer, at least by Steinberger and Grigorenko in 2012, but according to lots of cognitivists, of course, as well, is that, well, because they favor agents' success. Here, I will have to go a bit back to the mid-80s when Sternberg proposed his successful intelligence theory. And what was he talking about? Well, of course, he would challenge, as I mentioned before, G factor as being able to completely describe the phenomenon of rational behavior or of intelligence behavior. And he would say that it does, as I said before, it does measure computability quite successfully, but fails to observe what it takes for agents to reach their goals in the most fashionable way. That's what he means by successful intelligence. So the idea is, well, if it favors the agent's success, then that's rational. And that would be a problem because to be successful does not equal to be rational. And there are many parts of this objection. The first one is that success, well, it is not a univocal idea, saying maybe some people's circumstances will be considered to be successful by their own standards and unsuccessful by other standards. So that's, I think that's somehow clear. I hope so. Also, that these tendencies favor irrationality too, because that would be irrational. Sorry about the typos, but I had to do this in myself. It was a horrible history. But how could these tendencies favor irrationality? I will spend a little bit talking about this, because if you, for an instance, take this first tendency and say, oh, I have to gather information, but you do not stop at a suitable time, you might decide that you have to keep gathering more and more and more information, and that will become irrational, because then you wouldn't be able to act in order to, you might have to a specific time to make a decision or to take some action, and then try in, let's say, aiming to be super rational will become actually irrational. And that would happen in all the other cases as well. If they, there has to be an agent that is capable to be aware of the circumstance, but to decide when and how to use these tendencies. So I hope that's clear. And also there's a third objection, that the self-government theory should not be self-explanatory. What do I mean about this? Well, so far the idea, unfortunately, is that they say, well, these are the tendencies that favor rationality because people is successful when they use it. So it is, in a certain way, begging the question. And because we believe that the self-government theory should be well, it should be grounded in some higher order theory, not only for the self-government theory, but all of the theories shouldn't be self-explanatory and should be able to, let's say, be linked to other theories. So here's where we reach philosophical logic. What does it have to say? Well, first of all, I'm referring to Gilbert Harman in 1984. An inference is not what classical logicians might have think at some moment, what George Boole most definitely thought at some point. An inference is not only deduction. That nowadays is something quite clear, but back then was somehow a bit of a novelty. So an inference should be understood as a psychological event where a certain rational change of belief takes place. But then again, what is rational? And well, that's only for starters. Then there are some other inferential remarks. First of all, the extrinsical social character of rationality. Harman's paper was got replied by Mackenzie in 1989 and said, yes, Harman is on the right track, but he lost the sight of a very relevant thing. His view is only intrinsical towards the individual and its relation towards logic. And rationality has to be a social phenomenon. It has to be with what happens outside the individual. That's one thing. The second thing that we can learn from philosophical logic is that it should include ampliative inferences, that is induction or abduction, because though that kind of inferences has a lot more to do with creativity and discovery, let's say specifically in scientific theories. Then non-monotonicity with lots of authors, of course, I mentioned there Raymond Morado, but the idea that well, we could at some point, given certain information, retract what some premises or conclusions that we had, and keep working with that. And then, of course, para consistency, the idea that ideally we don't have to work with incomplete or contradictory sets of information, but factually we have to do that in both in scientific practices and in everyday reasoning. So, given all of this, how does that relate to cognitive styles? And what I'm hoping that I am managing to show is that the tendencies that I talked about before have to do with the tendencies of the cognitive styles have to do with the inferential features that I just talked about. There in blue color, I am talking about the tendency to gather information before reaching a conclusion or to seek different points of view. That has to do with the extrinsical or social character of rationality. The idea that we should think about consequences or evaluate pros and cons before making a decision has to do with ampliative inferences and counterfactual thinking that is related to scientific discovery or creative thinking. And last but nonetheless, to calibrate the strength of beliefs according to the strength of evidence and to avoid absolute views has to do with both non-monoticity and paraconsistency. And that's the idea. What we might propose here is the idea that a view of rationality grounded in, well, or based on these inferential features from philosophical logic, would actually help to ground the self-government theory on these inferential features I've just mentioned. It also could explain a very peculiar phenomenon that is the rational failure, what we're just calling here rational failure. That is, when you make a decision, well, taking your time, getting the right information, of course, reflecting on it, but still reach a wrong conclusion. Well, reaching the wrong conclusion does not necessarily make your inference irrational. Maybe you only had access to certain information that wouldn't allow you to reach the right answer. And this mirrors, of course, the idea of success. Reaching the right answer does not necessarily mean that you proceeded rationally. You might have done it by chance or epistemic luck or whatever. And lastly, that we offer a context-sensitive account for human rationality. And this way, I hope we get linked both cognitive science and philosophical logic. And that's it. I hope I didn't do it too fast. I hope it was okay for you. Thank you very much.